Some airplanes carry passengers, while others carry the weight of an entire company's future. The Boeing 787 Dreamliner did both. It arrived as a bold promise, with longer flights, lower fuel use, and a cabin built to feel different from the moment you sit down. Airlines saw an opportunity, and passengers saw comfort. Boeing saw a jet that could define a new age. But the deeper you look, the more complicated the story becomes. It started with delays piling up, costs rising, and pressure following every stage of its journey. So how did the Dreamliner become one of the most admired aircraft in the sky, while also becoming one of Boeing's most closely watched programs? For years, long-haul flying followed a familiar style with big metal jets, heavy structures, and cabins that left people tired before they even landed. Boeing wanted the 787 to break that pattern. This was the airplane that aimed to fly farther, burn less fuel, and make long trips feel less punishing inside the cabin. It was launched in 2004, first flew on December 15, 2009, and reached its first customer, All Nippon Airways, in September 2011, before entering commercial service the next month. That long gap told you something right away. This was never a routine airplane, but was a giant bet. And Boeing did not sell it as a small step forward. The Dreamliner was presented as a different way to build a passenger jet. By Boeing's own figures, the 787 family has now carried more than 1 billion passengers, opened more than 523 new non-stop routes, and reached more than 520 destinations across 85+ countries. And all these are only possible because of the plane's structure. Traditional airliners leaned heavily on aluminum. The Dreamliner moved in another direction. Boeing says the airframe is about 50% composites by weight. That matters because composites cut weight, resist corrosion better than aluminum, and reduce fatigue-related inspection needs. Boeing also says that design helps the 787 use about 25% less fuel than the aircraft it typically replaces. Lower fuel burn meant airlines could try routes that once looked too risky or too expensive. That composite structure also changed the passenger side of the story. The 787 cabin can be pressurized to the equivalent of 6,000 feet, instead of the roughly 8,000 feet common on older jets. Boeing says that lower cabin altitude, along with higher humidity and better filtration, helps reduce the fatigue many people feel on long flights. But there's more to the cabin. Then there are the details people notice without knowing the engineering behind them. The windows are larger than those on any other widebody now flying. According to Boeing, they use electronic dimming instead of the old plastic shade. The ride was also designed to feel smoother. Boeing says the jet uses systems that detect and counter turbulence, and pairs that with advanced aerodynamics. Even the engine nacelles were shaped with serrated chevrons to reduce noise inside and outside the airplane. So when people talk about the Dreamliner feeling different, that is not marketing fluff alone. A lot of that sensation was designed into the aircraft on purpose. Although when it comes to the electrical aspect, 787 came with something revolutionary. Under the skin, the 787 pushed another big idea. Boeing moved toward what many call a more electric aircraft. Instead of relying as much on traditional bleed air taken from the engines, the 787 uses a bleedless architecture for major functions like cabin pressurization and air conditioning. Rolls-Royce says the all-electric 787 architecture requires no bleed air from the engine and can draw up to 500 kilowatts of power from each engine for aircraft systems. This was a major shift in how a large airliner handled power. That same design logic fed into efficiency. Boeing says the 787 combines advanced aerodynamics, more efficient engines, and more electric systems to improve performance and reduce maintenance. However, what's most fascinating is the engine setup for the 787. Boeing gave airlines two engine choices. One was the General Electric GE-X, the other was the Rolls-Royce Trent 1000. GE's official data lists takeoff thrust for 787 versions of the GE-X at roughly 69,800 pounds, with a 111.1-inch fan diameter across those 787 models. Rolls-Royce says the Trent 1000 was designed specifically for the 787 family, with a bypass ratio above 10:1 and a long-running focus on fuel burn and durability improvements. Rolls-Royce also says its newer Trent 1000X standard improves time on wing and cooling performance, and that all future 787 deliveries using that engine will move to that latest standard. But for all the ambition, the 787 did not glide into service. What actually went wrong? The 787 program became famous for delays, cost growth, and pressure on the supply chain. Boeing had spread a lot of production work across suppliers in a way that was meant to speed assembly and cut costs. In practice, the program struggled badly. By the time the first Dreamliner reached ANA in 2011, the aircraft was years late compared with early expectations. The Dreamliner that was supposed to show a smoother future ended up showing how risky a radical production model could be. Still, once the plane got into airline service, its strengths were hard to ignore. Range and fuel burn gave carriers new room to experiment. Comfort helped sell tickets. And the family kept growing. The issue now moves away from the rough start to a functional problem. This led to the crisis that almost defined the jet. In January 2013, a Japan Airlines 787-8 suffered an auxiliary power unit battery fire while parked in Boston. Around the same period, an ANA 787 had a serious battery-related incident that led to an emergency landing in Japan. The FAA responded by grounding US-based 787s, the first grounding of a US-certified airliner type since 1979. A later report said the probable cause was an internal short circuit in a battery cell that led to thermal runaway, and it also said Boeing failed to include design requirements to mitigate the most severe effects of such a failure, while the FAA failed to identify that design deficiency during certification. That was a bad finding because it cut to the core of both design and oversight. Boeing eventually redesigned the battery system with stronger containment and venting, and the FAA approved the return to service in April 2013. The Dreamliner returned, but the shine had changed. Years later, the Dreamliner ran into another kind of problem. This time, it was production quality. Boeing suspended 787 deliveries for a long period when the FAA scrutinized inspection and rework plans tied to manufacturing issues. Reports showed that the halt stretched through 2021 and into 2022 before the FAA approved Boeing's inspection and rework plan, and deliveries resumed. And the pressure did not fully disappear. In 2024, FAA Administrator Mike Whitaker told Congress the agency had increased oversight of the production of new airplanes, with more FAA safety inspectors on site at all Boeing manufacturing facilities. The FAA also said in March 2024 that an audit had identified non-compliance issues in Boeing's manufacturing process control, parts handling and storage, and product control. Those statements were made in the context of Boeing quality concerns, but they matter to the 787 too, because the Dreamliner remained part of the question hanging over Boeing. Can the company build at scale without trust breaking again? In March 2026, Boeing said the FAA had certified an increased maximum takeoff weight for the 787-9 and 787-10. Boeing says the upgrade gives airlines more payload or more range. For the 787-9, that means about a 10,000-pound increase, which can translate to around 3 metric tons of extra payload or more than 300 nautical miles of added range. For the 787-10, Boeing says the gain is about 14,000 pounds, worth around 5 metric tons of payload or more than 400 nautical miles of range. Boeing also says all 787-9 and 787-10 aircraft assembled since December 2025 are structurally capable of the higher weight. That sounds technical, but the real meaning is that they are still trying to widen what the Dreamliner can do with longer routes, better payload, and more flexibility. The airplane is still being pushed forward. It is not a frozen design from 2011. It is still being tuned for the market that exists now.